Trustees. I apologize for our delayed start, but we were supporting the legislation that was going through committee over at the Senate Education and Youth Affairs Committee today, and I think it was time well spent. I know they appreciate the presence of all the trustees, appreciate all the trustees taking time to go over there. Chancellor, I'll turn this over to you.
Okay, very good. Well, we will begin with the proposed action items for our April board meeting. And under item 1 is a tuition rate adjustment. This is a regular yearly adjustment, and it's $2 per credit hour. I believe Jane, is Jane here? Great, thank you. If you would kind of explain the process and what that means.
Good afternoon. In 2009, the State Board of Education approved an annual rate adjustment of $2 per credit hour each fall. And last year we brought that to you as the Board of Trustees for your approval. Up until through fall of the tuition rate was $113 per credit hour. With fall of 2014 and then 15, you approved another $2 increase to $115 per credit hour. So we're asking this year that you increase the tuition by $2 again. That rate would, the rate for the 2016 fall would be $117. I believe is correct. Yes. So our recommendation is that you approve the increase of $2 per credit hour for fall of 2016. The fiscal consideration for that is almost $4 million, and that would be spread among the 26 institutions.
Any questions about that? Again, I think probably all of us in the room wished we didn't have to do that. In fact, I think most of us in the room would like tuition to be significantly lower. But frankly, we're so tight now, we're so thin right now, we just absolutely have to have that extra amount.
Is this an open amount? Is there an end date, or is this just an annual $2 increase every year?
This is an annual $2 increase each year, until this group would act differently on it.
Is that standard for the universities again?
No. What's standard for the universities are often double-digit increases. This is a very mild, a very moderate increase, and I can remember back when this was, when this was discussed, we looked at the absolute minimum we felt like we could get by on based on the trajectory of things, and there were mixed feelings about the fact that it should be higher than that, but we just felt like this was a good compromise. But no, typically the four-year institutions have significantly greater increases.
Is there something that drives the specific $2 increase that we've seen that's just
I was not here when that was initiated, so I'm not sure how they came up with that $2.
It really, at the time, it really was a compromise. There were some that I know were advocating $5 based on some numbers that we had. We just didn't feel like that would be sustainable for our students. And so I don't think there was a lot of logic other than the fact that this would be kind of a minimum amount that would allow us to at least remain competitive as institutions.
Certain metric in regards to the line item, projected cost versus projected revenue. Are we trending? Are we losing? Are we making some improvements?
I think, I don't have the trend in front of me, but I see y'all's a trend, I think, of enrollment numbers. So if you look at those enrollment numbers and multiply that by $2, that you see that the enrollment has declined, and I think even this year or this past fiscal year 15, there was a decline in the enrollment numbers.
I guess in general, and looking at those enrollment numbers, over the last 6 or 7 years, there's been a drop in enrollment of about 20,000 students. So 20,000 students, and let's say they're taking 10 hours apiece, it's 200,000 hours. So, you know, $2, we're not talking about a whole lot of money with respect to the big grand scheme of things.
It really is not enough to keep.
I mean, it doesn't approach a COLA or any kind of standard measure at all. It's really a small number.
Especially when you, like I said, it's less than 4 million. And then you have 26 institutions that actually collect tuition. So you're not talking about a lot of money per institution.
Thank you, Jay. The next item is an information technology request, actually two of them from Gadsden State, one dealing with computers and one dealing with infrastructure. And Rick, I think, maybe you could just walk us through that, what they're asking for.
Chancellor and Board, I do not have the paperwork at this time.
Okay.
Walk through this.
Okay. In essence, what they're asking for would address the computers and related equipment that sit on the desks that are in the labs, and there also are upgrades to the network infrastructure that, as I understand, will make that whole infrastructure function more effectively. It's time for that to be upgraded. So those are the two items as I understand them.
We have a view on IT manager, has he reviewed this plan, and this is part of his recommendation?
He has approved it. His wife had surgery last night, and so he unfortunately was unable to be here on that. But he has reviewed it, right? He's been a part of the meetings, and he has approved it.
Chancellor, the first purchase of instructional administrative computers, $220,803.29. And then for the upgrades to the network infrastructure, $158,026.
Correct. But he has worked very closely with the college on this, and actually has been a part of the committee that made recommendations that directly impact this.
What about at the very least, we have this in on the conference call?
We'll do that.
With a good more detail on the conference call prior to the next meeting?
Yep, we'll do that. We will do that.
Hopefully, we don't have AT&T involved. Is it simply too large of an animal to try to tackle to consider purchasing computers and IT equipment as a system? And, you know, volume discounts and programmatic, I mean, we look at 25 different purchasing programs.
One of the reasons for Vermont Graves' hire was, and one of his charges, to do exactly that. He has begun the work necessary to look more globally, system-wide, and not only in this area, but all of the IT areas. So it's absolutely the direction we're going. Absolutely. And again, I apologize, and I know he was sorry he couldn't be here today as well. He would have been able to address this much better than I. But we will do that. We will address that, and if you have any specific questions, make sure those are addressed prior to the next board meeting and during our conference call. Okay, under workforce, there are three items, and under Bevel State, I know that Gene, are you going to handle those three items?
Sure. Thank you, Chancellor. Thank you, everyone. These three items, the first one being from Bevel State Community College, purchase for a mobile welding trainer. This is designed to assist the college in providing welding training at the Pickens County campus, and this is the partnership they have with Pickens County. This particular equipment is going to be paid for through an Appalachian Regional Commission grant, and there has been extensive work on the specifications to make sure that it's got the proper ventilation and meeting OSHA standards and et cetera. And they have also worked with other colleges that have mobile training units. So we recommend approval for that. The purchase of instructional equipment from Wallace State Community College, Hanceville. The first one is for some equipment to be used in a diagnostic medical sonography program. And basically this is to replace some outdated equipment that they have and to make sure that the students are going to be working on the latest technology. And I personally would like for them to be doing that. But it's to replace some outdated equipment, and that's going to be coming out of unrestricted funds to pay for that. And the last one from Wallace State Community College, Hanceville, is for some machine equipment in the machine tool program there for a total of $221,000, and that's going to those funds are coming from the Carl D. Perkins funds, which we have verified through their budget process that they did request those funds, and they also have some workforce development dollars. The same thing has been approved there with as far as electrical requirements and facilities and et cetera through their facilities individual. And this is based on advisory committee input to kind of add some additional CNC machines because of the need in the service area that Wallace State has with the business and industry at their location. Any questions?
Comment?
Sure.
I would like to thank Wallace Hanceville for their detailed presentation on equipment. And then I'd like to back up. Again, here we are talking about a welding trainer. No specifications, no design. Could have called Dothan and we got a picture of theirs. You know, I hear you say it meets all the standards. Who decided? Has somebody done the research? Has an architect designed this? Where are those standards? Does it meet NFPA 7E? And where does it meet OSHA on egress and entrance and egress? There's a whole lot of questions when you start mixing flammable, explosive materials in a confined space. And if you say it's met OSHA and it's met NFPA 7E, does it meet confined space requirements with the sensors, with the carbon monoxide sensors installed? Unfortunately, I have been to funerals where people have gotten caught up in explosions with the mixture of these gases together. So I'm going to keep harping on it day in and day out until somebody shows me, yes, this is what we're going to order and this is what it looks like. I'm sorry, it's just I don't want to go to, I do not want to put any student in harm's way.
Mr. Smith, we actually have Max Weaver with us from Bell State. He actually has some of the specs with him now, and what we kind of worked with them on is to contact Dothan and Lurling B. Wallace and also AIDT and their mobile units to make sure that we had some of those specs, and they have done their due diligence on that, but I'm sure that they'd be willing to share that with you if you'd like to see that.
Well, I'd love for you to share it with our committee and in the future put it in the book as Wallace did here. There's no question. You see what the estimates are. You see what the equipment they're buying. So I just want to see these start being added. So the same question, and I'm not, y'all getting tired of me asking the question. Please put it in the book and I'll be quiet. So yes, I would like to see those after the meeting and share them with Milton and Crystal and let us look at them.
I'll get that from Mr. Weaver, and I'll make sure that we send it out to you folks.
Thank you.
Any others?
I just wanted, if I could, just respond a minute. And Gene, we do have all of that here. And sir, you don't ever have to apologize for asking
No,
questions
that's
about
right.
student safety. So I certainly commend you for that. And but we do have all of that information, and we can include it in high beforehand one. And I think we'll see that we, as Gene said, we've been consulting that research. It's got to have the information on your shit.
Absolutely agree with it's needed. You haven't been that, it's needed. And I want
Good
to
time.
protect everyone involved.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir, I'd like to see that.
Yes, sir.
I guess I have a question. I know we're using about 70% of this grant. Do we prioritize these purchases, or how was this particular purchase selected as a priority one, or?
For their grant?
Yeah, for the welding machine.
That is actually a direct grant from ARC, and I don't know actually the process that you had to go through, Max, if you might could
What was
explain
the
that.
question? I didn't quite
I
get.
know we were utilizing about spending 70% of the grant. So I was wondering, do you prioritize these purchases, or what's the process?
When we first started talking with the ARC about the grant, and Gene mentioned that Pickens County is where it has to be used primarily, because that's a distressed county in our service area. And so we worked with the grant officer up there, and basically in those grants you have to do an 80-20 match. So we had to show that we were using some of the college funds, and then we based those numbers in the budget on information that we got from reaching out to the colleges and some other vendors. I actually shared with Gene when the amount came in, when we bid the equipment, the amount has actually came in a little bit under. So we're going to have a little bit more money to spend in that grant. We're going to go back to our ARC contact, and we're going to ask, can we, for example, we bid a used truck, and so the vendor ended up wanting to bid, had an 09 Volvo truck bid with just like under 500,000 miles. Well, we got a little bit more money, we can actually, probably get a better truck in that than they had one with less miles. So, but when you see that percentage, we have to provide a 20% match, as part of that grant.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gene. Okay, I'd like, Susan, are you here? Right. I'd like to ask Susan just to walk you through the next step in the consolidation process. We will be bringing a recommendation to you next board meeting.
Good afternoon. First of all, I want to let you know this is not a 57-slide PowerPoint presentation. Actually, what I want to do is just give you a really brief update about where we are now and what you can expect for next month. First off, though, I do want to respond to Mr. Thompson's question about the PowerPoint and putting it up on the website. What we have done is we've actually worked on condensing that PowerPoint. 57 slides is a lot to read. So really distilling it to the essence that we think people can glean a lot of helpful information from. We've already completed that. But what we'd like to do when we put it on the website is also include something called frequently asked questions. Because PowerPoint isn't always a friendly read for everyone. But we know that there are some very basic questions that people have, and we'd like to put that on the website as well. So now that we have action from you, and we have anticipated action on Friday, we will do just a little bit more updating of the PowerPoint and expect to have that and the frequently asked questions section on the website within the next several days. Thank you. Now, thank you so much for approving the statement of intent today. The next step is on Friday. We will be before the Alabama Commission on Higher Education for their review and approval of the statement of intent. We expect that to be approved with no problem whatsoever. Once we complete that, we will move to working with our accrediting agency, SAC-COC. April 8th is the next critical date for a submission. And that is the submission of the prospectus that we talked about a little bit in the PowerPoint last month. The prospectus contains a lot of the same information that the statement of intent contains, but there is some drilling down on some really key points that SACS is looking for. Now, while the prospectus is due on April 8th, your board meeting is not until April 13th. There are some elements of the prospectus that we need you to approve. Those elements include items such as the name of the new regional institution, the main campus, the mission statement. There's no way we can include that when we file. But what we can do is and we've already talked to our SACS liaisons, we can include an asterisk that says the naming of the institution and the mission statement will be provided upon approval of our board of directors. And that will be just fine with them. So the sequence will be, we will submit the prospectus on the 8th, but with a caveat, and SACS is aware of this and has approved it, that on April 13th, we will be back to you with the recommendation on the naming of the institutions, the mission statements, and some other elements that make it a little bit different from the statement of intent. We won't ask you to approve the entire prospectus, but those elements that really are distinct. Now, we don't have that information for you right now. You had a hearing this morning and you heard the discussion, the rich discussion is still ongoing about the main campus as well as the name of the institution. We expect the two groups to be winding down those discussions over the next couple of weeks, and as soon as they have a recommendation to the chancellor, we will pass that recommendation on to you, and then that will be on your agenda April 13th for approval. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
I'd mentioned toward the end of our board meeting just a moment ago that there've been a lot of people hard at work on the policy and policy discussion and carrying out the task of crafting this board's set of policies. I talked about the fact that there had been about a 1.5 to 2 year long period of time where we began that process. We've since updated the subcommittee. As I said, Ron Fantroy is chair. Susan Foy and Crystal Brown are members of that subcommittee, and the three of them have been working with others on my staff on board and on board policy, and they've gotten to a point where their work needs to be presented to you. And so I'm going to turn it over to Ron, and maybe you can kind of update the group and update them in terms of where we go from here.
Thank you, Chancellor. Mr. Board Chairman.
Sir.
The proposed draft has been developed and has been reviewed and studied by the subcommittee. We are prepared to present to the full board potential policy as we see is appropriate. There are a few other revisions and additions that we need to deliberate on. I talked to one subcommittee member this morning, and after studying the policy even deeper and even further than what we initially have done, it was suggested to me that there were some additional edits that might need to be done before we come before the full board with an official policy presentation. But also, we would like to give an opportunity for the board to have some idea what the direction we think the policy should go in. So we intend to present that to you for your review and also suggestions. After that, I feel very confident by no later than the next two board meetings, we should be in a position to take a full decision on it. But until we get there, I'm prepared to entertain any questions that you may have pertaining to the policy today.
Ron, I appreciate Susan, Crystal, appreciate the work y'all have done on this and the way you've gone over it, and look forward to hearing more about it. Could you maybe talk about some of the questions that y'all had when you were first presented these, and maybe some of the discussions y'all had in your committee meeting, about particular policies and
I'll speak to one of the key issues that was important to me that we did some revisions on was the role, the power, the responsibility of the chancellor's position. as it relates to the hiring, firing, and also review of and evaluation of presidents. That was one area that we did made some significant changes and changed the way the language in the policy draft as we had it. I don't think it differs very much from what we've seen over the last year, but we just want to make it a matter of documentation of that process.
This is just really important work by the committee and by the board. That was probably one of the issues in the legislation that we've just introduced is not, is for us to get our policies in place as soon as we could. And when we have those in place, I think that the legislature, if we approach them with anything else as far as changes with the board or board's responsibility or powers, once we have those policies in place, they'll be more comfortable with allowing those for the board. Let's see, is Roger here?
Yes, sir.
Roger, would you like to maybe add anything else, or maybe briefly go over the different parts of the policies that,
Sure.
or just some high points, so you
Sure.
don't need to get too deep in the weeds?
I think as the Chancellor mentioned this morning during the regular session, this project as a whole has quite a history to it that started well over a year ago with the subcommittees out at the college level. And essentially, if you can imagine the various departments of the college, human resources, business office, facilities people, these subcommittees were built around those people who worked in those areas. And so they were given opportunities for input into a lot of these policies. And to be quite honest about it, some of them have been around so long, no one could even remember why we had them anymore. So there were some, and I think you will get some information from me hopefully today, that are recommended to just be deleted because they're not even applicable anymore. For example, there are provisions in there dealing with our administration and your administration of AIDT. Well, last year, through legislation, AIDT was consolidated to the Department of Commerce. So you don't need those policies in your board policies anymore. That's an example. The issue that Mr. Fantor brought up is one that was highlighted because the law and how we actually function here in terms of the Chancellor bringing recommendations to you relative to President's employment status is that ordinarily comes with the Chancellor's recommendation to you. And the way the policy was written it was your job. And Mr. Fantor brought that up and said, we need to make that clear. The way we function here is that the Chancellor recommends those types of actions and the board either approves or rejects the Chancellor's approval so as not to give the appearance that the board's doing the hiring and the firing of the presidents. Does that make sense? And so we made some tweaks to the language to try to make those applications fit into some of this. And Crystal Brown made some very good observations, and one of the series is concerning the application of some of our insurances and different things. So we're looking into a variety of those things based on their input and how we need to address some of those things. But essentially what we did, if you've looked online, there are like 100 through 900 series policies, and each one of those concerns a particular subject matter. So we went after first those things which we felt had the most immediate application to our SACS review of the pending consolidations. So the 100 series, which we worked on first and contains some of the provisions that Mr. Fantroy mentioned, including the board governance change under the new law, is in the 100 series. Then there were things in the 600 series that have to do with personnel that are directly related to those issues, and certainly things like a standard EEOC statement, which you all are all familiar with in your own business policies. So you'll see that type of thing come in these drafts in the 600 series. Now, we learned today from being at the board, the Senate committee meeting on our bill, that the students first exclusion starting January 17 that we thought was in the bill will not go forward apparently. So we'll still have to deal with our own process of making sure our rules are consistent
there are some things that are in Students First that nomenclature is not the same as we use within the two-year system in reference to certain job classifications and that sort of thing. So we'll try to clean some of that up with this policy as well. The 300 and 500 series are things that 300 dealing with your financial and business office, 500 dealing with policies related to facilities. And there are some things there, I believe Mr. Smith, you're chairman of facilities. For example, there's some things there that y'all need to talk about. There's an authority limit in one of the provisions that you need to decide at what point does a project meet a financial threshold that you feel like it needs to be brought before you. Some of the committee work that had been done on that particular provision suggested $1 million limit before it was brought to you. I think now we function at a $500,000 limit, and that's moved around a bit. I wasn't a part of that committee work, so the draft that the subcommittee worked on with myself and Paige Joseph, we left that blank because we couldn't presume to know what your intentions may be about what you think is the value of that. So some input back to the subcommittee we would like to have from the full board so that when we present that policy back to you, it'll be much more concrete and in keeping with what your desires and wishes are for those things. A couple of other things that we're going to need some input and flexibility from you on. For example, one of this series deals with the imaginary lines. There's a policy within these provisions that deal with the service territories. And I think you have expressed your views about that in a number of board meetings, and we certainly have that. Now we've got to actually do something with it on our end. And certainly that has significant impact and needs to be thought through relative to the administrative code provisions that are currently in place from the Alabama Commission on Higher Education, because they have within their own procedural rules references and some restraints to deal with those things. So we're breaking new ground a bit when we deal with the service area policy. So we've got that one over here on the side is we need more board discussion and input into that type of subject. One that has a little bit of public debate is our gun policy. What do we do with guns on campuses? You'll see that in some of the information that I'll send you. So once you see what's there, and the Chancellor issued a memo, executive memo from his office, a directive to the campuses concerning guns a good while back. I think it was probably 2 years ago when the legislature passed that legislation. So there are a number of things that you all need to kind of discuss and give us a little guidance on. As a scrivener, if it's legal, I can draft it, but I don't presume to, know what your desire is about those things. And so we're going to need some input, Mr. Chairman, from the board on some of those items. And so what I'm going to try to do for you is to, if you can just understand, these are working papers at this point. Essentially mine as your counsel in this process. But I'm going to give you 3 sets of things which I think are far enough along that you could look at adoption or approval of some of those. There's a middle ground that needs some discussion from you, and a third set that really contains items which we would propose you delete. And this is all by reference to the whole policy, so you will know what did the previous board say or where did they stand on these issues. There was a number of the group that asked for that, rather than us simply providing you the new rules and new policies that you were going to look at, but to show you the roadmap where you came from with regard to those. Please understand that they are a work in process, and that at this point, even the numbers on them you should not pay any attention to, except by referencing a comment, because they'll need to be reformatted and renumbered, and we'll have to source each one of those policies to the law, which we tried to do as we go forward, but that'll be a very carefully done process before they're adopted, so that we're properly sourced them. We talked about this last Friday. The subcommittee had a conference call, and we went through a lot of these things. And one of the things that we discussed, and I'd like to get your thoughts on, is how to collect back from you, once you can review my work papers, your collective views or thoughts on some of these policies, so that we had at least one repository for a collection of that information, so that number one, it didn't get lost, Number two, it doesn't go around to so many different folk that it never gets somewhere where the common scrivener has got access to that. So your pleasure on that, Mr. Fantroy, is to...
Once we get that distribution made to all of the board members, I would love to see response within 2 weeks if possible.
Okay.
Discussion.
Yes, yes. Thank you for bringing that up. You will see in some of the work papers some redlining. That is because in our meeting last Friday, there were some changes suggested. I understand, Ms. Boyd, you've even brought some today.
Yes.
So they're going to, when you see those red line changes in those discussion documents, know that's your committee's work. That's the only thing in red is going to be their work. It will not be mine. Mine's already, reduced down to the initial black type. So the red line that you will see is your committee's work, so that you can look at that and see that that is their proposed changes to those particular documents. And how do you want to collect the data?
Would you mind being the central
Oh, I just
repository?
If you don't mind, let's send it all to Paige, Josie. I think you all have her email, and she's been very, very helpful and instrumental in this process, as you can well expect. So much of this ties and lays over, with our human resources effort. And I don't know if there's a day that goes by that she and I are already engaged on something, so it's not going to get lost. I know that because she's too good for that. But it's been a very long process getting here, over a year, to get to this point. And the committee's done an outstanding job. They caught things that we frankly didn't see, but I think that's because sometimes when you come new, you can see the trees in the forest. And sometimes when we get deep in it and it misses them. So I want to say to the subcommittee, thank you all for your good work and for sharing those thoughts, because they were very meaningful to the process.
And I will tell you that I compared or analyzed the proposed draft of our systems policy to 2 other additional systems policies that were more or less robust than the one that we have. But I think we really addressed the key issues that should drive the system forward. But again, I would love to have your input on that, and I expect there to be some.
Okay.
Be quite candid with you. And we'll definitely take all that into consideration before we come forward with the final draft.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I just had one thing.
Go ahead, yeah.
The
Yes, sir.
policies in the series that have been circulated, obviously, getting here 1 through 900, that means we've got more work to do. So the ones that are out there now are 100, 300, 500, 600, and 800. Is it 800? 900, excuse me, I missed one. So there are other ones that we still have to get to. The ones on instruction, for example, we still have to someone institutional effectiveness. So just understand, this isn't the whole package. This is a huge bite of it, and a really big, important part of it particularly from the SACS standpoint, what we're doing. So we're going to keep moving forward with those other ones, and we'll bring those to you. The other point I wanted to make to you is this. If there is concern or debate about a particular policy, not a series, but one within it, it is permissible for you to adopt whatever you are in agreement on and then add to and supplement a particular policy later on. That's the beauty of policy, as opposed to that across the street. When you're in legislation, we can interchange these and move them as we can. So you don't have to wait to approve those things which you find you're all in agreement on and want to move forward on. If there's something you need to pull out and say, we want to talk about that more, this needs more time, it's fine to sit that one on the table and just not deal with it right now, and deal with the ones, unless it's one that's consolidation or SACS critical. At that point, we need to know quickly so that we can deal with it. But I don't think we have any controversy surrounding those particular things. So I just wanted you to know you've got the freedom to move that policy through. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing proposition, if that makes sense.
Roger, I guess the question I have for you or Dr. Price about time-wise as it relates to SACS accreditation. when do we need to have this policy finalized to the board as it relates to that submission?
Susan, you're answering, you want me to answer? Yesterday would be the best day that we could have it. Obviously, if we could get as much of this done at the April 13th meeting, that gives us time. We're going to be supplementing anyway, but as SACS is reviewing our prospectus, and if they come back to us and say, can you give me your policy on X, Y, and Z, it sure would be nice for us sometime between April 18th and June 16th, is that SACS day? Sooner the better for a lot of these, if they should ask for it.
Okay.
Now, the one that deals with your overall governance, Dr. Pellegros, I think that's all. Can you give a timeline on the
It's due
April 12th? We're in the second step of that, right? We completed the first step with the change of governance last May. We're about to enter the second step of that. And that's all going very smoothly, but you just have to understand it's a time issue and they're gathering a lot of information. So the more you could give us on April the 13th, I know of 6, 7 presidents out there that would really appreciate it, so that we could have as much of this on April the 13th as possible. But whatever we don't get on April 13th, if we can push it through and get the rest of it on the May calendar, then we would have some of these essential things done before SACS were to take a vote on those consolidations, which is at their June 16th. Does that help?
Sure. Is it agreeable to the full board that if no one by chance responds within the 2-week time limit, by default, that means approval?
I don't like that.
I'm just a results-oriented person, so I'd like to try to put a stipulation out there because a no response kind of
Yeah, I'd rather push
tightens
it
it.
on.
Okay.
I got your back.
Well, if you do that and you can get close within a couple of weeks, then that would allow us to have as much of this on the April 13th regular agenda as possible. So that'd be great.
Are those including the additional ones that we haven't seen yet?
No, that will not, no, we haven't started those.
So I know, I was wondering if there was going to be another conference call Friday, but, okay.
No, we're good.
Okay.
Well, that's my question. You haven't yet addressed any of the financial policies.
That's in this series, you're gonna get it. It is.
Okay. What number?
It's a 300 series.
300. I missed that, all right.
Yeah, so you're gonna get those.
What about facilities?
Facilities is 500 and that's in this batch.
From the financial side, the audit and finance committee have been working with Jane, and we have a lot of information. We haven't distributed it to the entire board yet because we're still trying to decide what to give you. And we're trying to understand the metrics, but we already see a need for policies for standardizing procedure for each institution. We get things, and Jane gets things here at the central office that come in multiple different ways. It's rather difficult for her to report anything to us that we can quickly digest. And unfortunately, we're going to bring to you a significant request to help make that happen, financial request with your software, and it's a long-term thing, but there is a plan that we've got to get in place. So it may not be as much policy initially as it is a master plan on how we accomplish this for the entire system, such that policies can be effective. Because right now, we don't have the tools or the possibility to employ some of the policy that we really need, just simply because we have different platforms on software, we have different reporting and different accounting procedures, different charts of accounts with all the various institutions, so we have apples and oranges in a major way, and we need a big apple or a big orange, one of the two.
Yeah.
I'm sort of partial to big orange.
Okay.
Well, and that's an area too that we can always add to. As that master plan's coming together and in these policies to surround it, we can always draft and add to as that's reaching a better understanding for implementation.
I think as you suggested, that's going to be a process.
It is.
But certainly the timeline and that pretty good idea of what we're up against. But we have to get to that orange or apple. That's going to be critical.
Just as a point of question, Ron, did y'all get that email that Milton dug up on that rule 156?
415.
115?
415.
415, excuse me, from the University of Alabama. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. That was one of the ones I reviewed, and it was very extensive. Very.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
y'all.
Roger.
Thanks, Roger.
Ron, do you have anything else? Any committee, thank you for your work. Thank you for your diligence on this. We appreciate and look forward to receiving those policies, and hopefully we'll respond in a timely manner so you can get that going.
Dr. Fitch has been delayed until next month. I think I mentioned that to you. I have just one other item. I know a number of you have been asking about an ACCS email. We'll get that set up for you in the next week or two. Yeah, next week or two. So, or less, yeah. I think we can do that pretty quickly. That will allow, and I know it'll take a little bit of time to educate people about that new email address, but it'll be well worth it. So we'll get that taken care of. So,
Chancellor, our office will contact each of the individual master.
very good.
I guess it would default some of the information we get to that source as opposed to our business email addresses.
Yes, yes.
Prevent somebody from getting through the cloud, I guess.
That's, we had that conversation, some of us did earlier, and it's an effort to try to change that so that you don't get everything of your business address.
It will take some time to retrain, but we appreciate the effort.
Definitely.
Very good.
So it's no legislative update, or just
Jimmy, is there
any
anything more on the legislative front? Would you like to update them about? Any more on the legislative update?
I think that's all that they want.
Yep.
Okay, now, you said you're going to postpone, we've moved Dr. Fitch with AIC to next month's work session. What will be, we're talking about an extended work session or retreat, if you will, on, is it April 13th?
April 13th.
April 13th. So like a 1 to 5 that afternoon, you still want to have Dr. Fitch here?
We probably will delay that beyond that.
Okay, that's what I was
I'm working with
thinking.
him. I have not
Right.
nailed him down yet.
Okay.
Because there really are two major topics we want to discuss, certainly the policy, and I think I mentioned.
And workforce.
And workforce, and what's going on there. It's critically important for this board to understand and just kind of know what's happening statewide and how it affects us.
Okay. Do you have a commitment from a facilitator that we?
Yes.
You do? Okay. Very good. Okay, nothing else, Chancellor?
Nothing else.
Did y'all have anything else to add, Chuck?
Yes.
Okay.
For those that sat in today, they were as painful today as they were last week. I would like to thank the Chancellor, the staff, and everyone that did a great presentation. I think it helped to see faces in there from the presidents to the office, and I was very proud to sit there and listen at the support we got from our presidents, even in presence there. So it's come a long way since last week, and part of that was y'all's presence and the work that was done by the staff getting ready for this week, and hopefully we'll have as much success tomorrow coming out of committee. So,
And I might
thank
add,
you.
too, and I appreciate that, might add too, that the letters that
Yes.
many of you produced went to each of those committee members. That also had a profound effect on this bill moving forward. So we're very grateful for your support on that front as well.
And one of the things that I saw in talking to some of the legislators one-on-one in their offices, they actually hear the letters.
That's great.
So it made an impact, and they were put in as public comment, so that worked great.
So they did read them.
They did read them,
Okay.
and some of them showed them to me, so I was proud to see that, and thanks for everybody's effort in this one.
This would have been an easy one to kill.
Yes.
It would have been without.
They gave us a toolbox, now we got to put the tools in it, so this is one.
Anyone else have anything to share or input? As we look toward that work session or extended, or retreat or extended work session next month, if you have any thoughts on that, I think Chancellor's open to that, but I'd like the focus will be policy and will be board policy and will be workforce.
And we'll have a number of key resource people here available to you, presenting to you about this all-important topic of workforce. And I think you will enjoy that, and it will help stimulate the conversation that I think we desperately need to have about this issue. So,
Once again, President, staff, we appreciate y'all's attendance and your interest in what we're doing. Thank you very much for your support and your encouragement. If there's nothing else, we'll stand adjourned.
and Presidents, we will meet in just a couple of minutes.